Imagine you opening the manga Fire Punch and suddenly you are hit with flames that scorch your senses from the very moment. Fire Punch isn't just a manga, it's a fiery punch that strikes you mercilessly and leaves a permanent mark. In this universe, logic and hope are quickly incinerated, leaving behind only a captivating madness that hypnotizes you. Yes, that's exactly how Fire Punch feels. I read this manga without being able to put it down, but wait, is Fire Punch a proof of pure madness or pure genius? That's what we'll discover together. Grab a drink, get some snacks, and let's explore the crazy universe of Fire Punch together. Hi, I'm Ezabe. Before we begin, I recommend you to check the chapters of this video to avoid unwanted spoilers. Enjoy watching. Let me tell you something interesting. The creator of the series is Tatsuki Fujimoto. If the name sounds familiar, it's because he's also the author of the well-known series Chainsaw Man. The guy who decided that a man with chainsaws for hands and a head was a great idea, and surprise, it actually was. Before we dive deep into Fire Punch, let's take a look at the artist behind this fascinating story, Tatsuki Fujimoto. At first glance, he seems like a pretty ordinary guy, right? But don't be fooled. It's like saying a chili pepper is just a cute fruit. Wait until you taste it. And after I present you with some interesting facts about him, I'm sure you'll change your mind. You'll see why Fujimoto isn't so normal and how he managed to create such crazy story. If normality would be a straight line, Fujimoto would be the guy drawing spirals all over it. Fujimoto has a rather unusual artistic background for a mangaka. According to CBR.com, Fujimoto discovered his passion for drawing at a young age, but in his hometown the only art courses available were oil painting ones. So instead of drawing cool manga heroes, he probably spent some time painting I mean still life portraits. Nothing inspires a future manga artist like a bowl of fruits. He dreamed of becoming a mangaka for a long time, and while studying Western drawing style in college, he created his own short stories to prepare for his future works. Up to this point, everything sounds very normal, right? But things get really interesting from here on out. Fujimoto never worked as an assistant for other mangaka. Now you might be asking, what's so shocking about this? Well, it's quite unusual because in the manga world, most successful artists have worked as assistants for other popular creators. This practice is so common that you can trace an entire family tree of assistants who later become renowned mangaka. But we'll talk more about that in a future video dedicated to this topic. Fujimoto, on the other hand, decided to skip this step. It seems he was too busy developing his own unique style, as if he would say, you know what, I'd rather do things my way, with a bit of fire and lots of madness. Before we dive into the truly unusual things about Tatsuki Fujimoto, I also want to mention that several of his assistants have gone on to create very popular manga. Here are 3 examples. Yuji Kaku, author of the series Hell's Paradise; Tatsuya Endo, author of series Spike's Family; Yukinobu Tatsu, author of the series Dan Da Dan. So we are talking about some pretty popular series. Fujimoto assistants probably thought, if Fujimoto can succeed without being an assistant, let's see what we can do after being assistants to a genius. Now let's move on to the weirder things Fujimoto has done. According to CBR.com, Tatsuki Fujimoto pretended to be his non-existent sister on Twitter. Although he keeps his personal life out of the public eye and doesn't have social media accounts under his real name, since 2013 he has managed a Twitter account pretending to be his fictional younger sister. In a parallel universe, Fujimoto could have written soap operas. The tweets were written in a childish and simple style, as if they were the thoughts of a 3rd grade student. However, Fujimoto's sister didn't just post funny tweets. She occasionally recommended movies or talked about other anime and manga, praising her big brother for his tastes. If you didn't know who was behind the account, you would think this fictional sister had excellent taste and a rather strange big brother. This bizarre joke didn't go unnoticed and sparked much controversy, from issues regarding age restrictions to conflicts with Fujimoto's editors. Let's hope those editors had a good sense of humor, or else Fujimoto might have risked being punished with an intensive curse of normality. Before we move on to discussing Fire Punch, I want to show you once again just how normal Fujimoto really is. My guy even tried to levitate in real life. Here's the footage. Enjoy.
今から浮きます。
I believe
This doesn't make you wonder if Fujimoto has some hidden superpowers. I don't know what will. Now that we have discussed how Fujimoto's normality is a flexible and fictional concept, everything that follows will make much more sense. Get ready because things are about to get really crazy. Seriously, I don't know what kind of coffee Fujimoto drank while writing Fire Punch, but it definitely wasn't a normal coffee. It all starts with our main character Agni, who lives in a snowbird village surrounded by an endless snowfall. And if you thought things couldn't get worse, we'll quickly learn that the entire planet is covered in the same snow, like some kind of endless winter nightmare. Agni, his sister, and the rest of the villagers, most of whom are quite old, struggle to survive. Agni and his sister gather firewood to warm themselves and the others in the village. But that's not the most shocking part, and I warn you, that's a high chance your stomach will turn when you find out what Agni and his sister do to survive. In this post-apocalyptic world where people have started developing special powers, Agni and his sister have the ability to regenerate. So to feed the village and themselves, they cut off their own arms and legs. Yes, you heard that right. Fresh slices of themselves every day. Now, most of the villagers prefer to eat the remaining canned goods or simply starve to death rather than resorting to this voluntary cannibalism. Even though Agni and his sister offered their flesh willingly, it was still cannibalism in the end, and honestly, I don't blame them. From my point of view, this refusal is perfectly normal and understandable, because let's be serious, who'd want to start their day with a fresh serving of a bowl of fingers for breakfast? Here comes the next twist in the story, one that hits you like a speeding train. Just as you barely processed the previous shock, a few pages later things get even darker. A plane full of people lands near Agni's village, searching for supplies for their base. Everything seems pretty normal until one of them discovers one of Agni's arms. And how does he react? Well, upon learning that some of the village residents have resorted to cannibalism, the guy becomes so disgusted and enraged that he decides to burn the entire village, people and all, using his pyrokinesis. Yeah, this man can generate and control fire, but not just any fire. This special fire won't stop burning until everything it touches turns to ash. Basically, if something can regenerate infinitely, the fire will continue to burn endlessly, and that's where the name Fire Punch comes from. This is where Agni's truly insane and painful story begins. As I mentioned earlier, Agni has the power to regenerate. However, even though his body can heal, the pain remains. When Doma, the guy with the unstoppable fire, sets Agni ablaze, it ignites an agony that lasts for years. Just think about it, the deadly cold of winter, his body exposed to the flames, and the constant pain of the fire burning his flesh while his body regenerates endlessly. And why? Because over time Agni kept cutting pieces of his own body to feed others, which made him more resilient. But since this fire won't stop until it burns everything, Agni becomes trapped in an endless cycle of pain, a torment that would drive anyone insane. However, after months or perhaps even years of suffering, while for you as reader is just a few pages, Agni rises from the snow, now an adult able to endure the constant pain enough to move. The village is reduced to ruins, no one is left, and Agni remembers that his sister died in the flames, begging him to live and survive. Why did Agni survive and not his sister? Well, his regeneration was much more stronger because at some point in his desire to protect her, he stopped cutting her arms off and only sacrificed parts of himself. Unfortunately, this meant her regeneration was weaker compared to his, and she couldn't withstand the fire. Agni realizes this and starts blaming himself for what happened. Although his mind tells him his sister is dead, Agni refuses to accept reality. In his mind, there's still hope, a small chance that he'll find her alive. So, with his body burned by the flames that never go out, and with an iron will, he moves forward, searching for any sign of life. Who knows, maybe somewhere out there a miracle awaits him. But it's not just hope that drives him forward, it's also rage. The rage to get revenge on the man who turned his life and the entire village into ashes. Agni is determined to find him, confront him, and make him pay for everything he's done. So with every step, with every breath, he faces the pain with a burning desire for revenge and the hope of finding his sister. It's incredible how dark things get in just a few chapters. Seriously, the twists come one after another without giving you a moment to breathe, and each dark event is like a fiery punch straight to the gut. You reach a point where you either finish the story in one go or regret every second you are not immersed in this world. And trust me, what I've told you so far is just the tip of the iceberg. Things can get much darker, and they do so very quickly. Do you want some examples? Sure, here we go. People with electric powers are used as batteries and power generators, or the fact that the story tackles themes that, although captivating, remain incredibly disturbing. We are talking about genocide, torture, slavery, mutilation, forced pregnancy, terrorism, and politically and religious brainwashing. And honestly, the list could go on with even darker themes, but I rather prefer to not get my video taken down just for mentioning them. So if you want to learn more, I leave you to do your own research. Returning to our list, let's not forget Agnes' PTSD. Yes, post-traumatic stress disorder is another major element in the story. You can see a brief explanation on the screen about what PTSD means. The moments when Agnes' PTSD symptoms surface are particularly intense, especially during the brief period when he manages to escape the eternal flames that consume his body. But to go into more detail about that period and discuss the other topics we have only touched without giving away major spoilers in the non-spoiler section, let's move on onto the spoiler section of the video. Spoiler warning! The spoiler section of the video follows. Proceed at your own risk. Let's start with the topic we discussed earlier, Agnes' PTSD. I mentioned that his symptoms are very evident, and the best example comes when, for a brief period, he escapes the flames that constantly torture him. When he no longer feels the pain he had grown accustomed to, Agnes, free from the eternal fire, begins to lose himself in his own traumas. Instead of being freed, he breaks down mentally, without the psychical pain to occupy his mind. Dark thoughts overwhelm him. So, in an act of desperation and madness, Agnes begins to kill unreasonably and to do things he normally wouldn't do. Let's not forget that he even sets himself on fire again, this time voluntarily, finding bizarre solace in the flames that burn him endlessly. Now, let's get back to the other dark details. People with electric powers are used as living batteries, slaves with their limbs cut off, connected to machines, treated as tools, not as humans. It's a level of cruelty hard to comprehend until you read this manga. Mutilation is another topic. Characters with severed limbs, plus an individual who despises having been born a man and wishes had been born a woman, but because of his very strong regeneration ability, which prevents his transition to becoming a woman, he constantly mutilates himself in an attempt to change something that cannot be changed, or at least to ease his suffering through constant mutilation. Another example is religious and political brainwashing, specifically a child with electric powers who travels with Agnes and ends up being captured only to be saved later. Traumatized, the child idolizes his savior so much that he creates a religion around Agnes. Considering his eternal fire to be sacred, Agnes becomes the god who will save humanity from the eternal winter, even though he is just a man like any other. This is a clear demonstration of political and religious brainwashing, a strong theme in Fire Punch. And as if that wasn't enough, Agnes meets a woman identical to his sister, but unfortunately she is not her. Still, he clings to a false hope, refusing to accept reality. He knows she can be his sister, but deep down he hopes that maybe, just maybe, it's possible and she has only lost her memories. Unfortunately, spoiler alert, she's not. I wish I could continue discussing more spoilers, but honestly the story is so dark that I risk having my video taken down. So if I haven't convinced you to read Fire Punch yet, I hope you're intrigued enough to do so now. The rest of the disturbing moments are waiting for you to discover them in the pages of this manga. For those who have already read Fire Punch, I know you are curious to hear my conclusion and final score, so let's move on to the conclusion. After all the discussion and the more stories I've shared to explain the universe of Fire Punch, I think it's pretty clear that I love this manga, and unmistakably one of my favorites, probably in my personal top 10. And before I explain why, I tell you straight, my rating is 10. Why 10 and not 9? Simple, I couldn't find solid reason to give it less. I'm not saying Fire Punch is the best manga of all time, but it certainly deserves a place in a top 10. If I haven't convinced you yet, I recommend you read it for yourself, and I'll give you a few reasons for that. First of all, Fire Punch doesn't follow the well-trodden path of most post-apocalyptic manga. Yes, this might bother some people, but from a narrative point of view, In my opinion, the ending and the storyline Fujimoto chose makes more sense and have more logic than the classic version of this type of story. And in my opinion, they are of a particular genius. Fujimoto may be and seem a little crazy, but that doesn't mean he doesn't know what he's doing. In short, Fire Punch is the kind of story that grabs you from the start, hits you emotionally from all sides, and gives you a hope that things will get better. Only crush your hopes again. It leaves you with questions, sometimes even existential ones, especially at the end. So all can I say is give it a chance and you won't regret it. I've been Azabe, I hope you enjoyed this video and I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Give this manga a shot and don't forget to check out the video recommended by YouTube right now. Bye! Ouch! How on earth did I manage to fall off the chair? And not again. The mic's still recording. You know what? Never mind. You know, just cut this part during the editing.
牛乳メグミルク好きな生クリーム好きなアイスソフトクリーム僕は生きてる